I went to the movies recently and saw that more than half of the movies that were going to be coming out were all sequels or prequels. I mean, a prequel is like the same thing. It's just like a sequel, but in reverse. This isn't necessarily a new phenomenon, but it makes sequels a little bit less special. Sequels used to be this proud accomplishment that a movie or story could be so good enough to warrant a further installment if it didn't set up one already. But now sequels are pretty much a dime a dozen. It's less of an intentional expansion of the world, but rather probably a cash grab to suck as much as you can out of the franchise. It's not to say they're all bad. They could definitely be good, but when they're bad, it's more glaringly obvious these days that they're just there as a cash grab. They're just like a little mosquito laying on your veins, just trying to suck the finances right out of you. So with the barrels and barrels full of sequels, if you're gonna give me one these days, it better be freaking good. You gotta prove to me that this is worthwhile. I am a 9-to-5 working adult. I don't got the time. Not only do I have to watch Beetlejuice, but then next summer I know that there's gonna be a Beetlejuice. All these sequels that probably don't need to happen have gotten me thinking. What is the criteria we can say these days that makes for a good sequel? I've been thinking about this and working on it for a little while now, and listen, I'm not a storytelling expert. I'm just a dude with a snail kind of opinion, just trying to figure out what my criteria are for a good sequel. So far, I came up with 3 things. I personally think that a good sequel should do at least one or more of these things. 1, challenge the characters using the foundation of the first story. 2, have a plot that expands off of the foundation of the first story. And 3, fleshes out existing themes or adds new themes. I don't think sequels need to do all 3 of these things. If you could at least hit one of these 3 hard, sick nasty. If you could do more, sick nastier. Now this brings me to Iron Flame. Iron Flame, the highly anticipated follow-up to the massively popular Fourth Wing. It was sitting at Powell's Bookstore's #2 best-selling in fiction, so I had to read it. Why am I reading the #2 best in fiction? Well, because ACOTAR has been in the first spot for the past 500 weeks. So now we gotta start reading the second options. Now, I want you to be gentle with me after what I'm about to say. I know I'm probably gonna get ratioed for this. I know I'm probably gonna lose some subscribers. Probably gonna go to book jail or something, or worse, being banished into the Shadow Realm. I understand. I know you need to do what you need to do. I just ask that you be gentle with me, okay? All right, here we go. I did not like Iron Flame. Not at all. Oh, dang it, not the Shadow Realm! Well, if I'm gonna be sitting around in the Shadow Realm till the end of time, I might as well tell you why I didn't really care for Iron Flame that much. Who are you? Jack Barlow, you idiot! I died. I was completely obliterated from Fourth Wing, remember? Oh, sure. Here's the thing. If you watch my Fourth Wing video, you know my thoughts on it were pretty mixed. And I was really on the fence about it because I just didn't really care for Yarros' writing style that much. It's just very pragmatic, it's nondescript, and also pretty juvenile at times, even though it has a lot more adult content. She just loves ending chapters with a single not my thing. But there were a couple elements that I did enjoy. Like the charming character dynamics between Vi and the dragons. X-Games Xaden was a pretty fun character. The combat was pretty cool. And I really did like the idea of the Venom and the Wyverns. It made for a fun enough experience that just got me on board right at the end. And Iron Flame got me to kickflip right off that board, heel flip right into the dumpster. There are 2 pretty big issues that overarch this whole book, and I think ruined this book for me. Big offenders to my criteria of what makes a good sequel. 1, I think Yarros severely mishandles her characters. And 2, I don't think she actually fleshed out any elements that she built up in Fourth Wing in a meaningful way. Let's start with the first point, the characters. I wasn't a huge fan of Yarros' characters to begin with, other than some of the main characters like Vi, Xaden, the dragons. Not many other characters stood out to me that much. The friend group with Rhiannon, Sawyer, Sullivan, Duke, Alvin, I don't freaking know. I do not remember who any of these people are because they're just so general and nondescript. Like if you asked me to describe them to you, I'd be like, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, they're people, probably. They're pretty generic. And that's not like the biggest issue or anything. But the majority of the whole first part of the book is spent with Vi just like being, subtly sneaking around her friend group, not to expose the fact that she's secretly part of a rebel uprising. I think that whole dynamic kind of distracts from more important things that we could have focused on in the book. A couple of those things being Sloane and Catriona. The bland side characters, whatever. But Sloane and Catriona, this is an example of characters drastically being mishandled. Like the way I mishandled the delivery of that word. These are two major character inclusions that I think could have done a lot to develop Vi as a character, to challenge her. But instead, we get a couple of characters that are just they're present. You know, they're here. They're here for the ride. Ride or die. Biatch. They have like some good moments, but overall, don't do much for the story. Sloane is a new first year who we learn is Liam's younger sister. So naturally, she's pretty mad. She's angry at Vi because he died on her behalf, protecting her. And Vi is really guilty about this, obviously. And so Sloane being present, she feels this sort of obligation to like take care of her and look over her. But naturally, Sloane is really pissed. And this is a pretty interesting setup because we have somebody who's a very tangible form of guilt for Violet. And we could potentially see the ways in which these two characters come together and reconcile is like a way of maybe like reconciling some guilt and grief and, interesting things like that. Do we get any of that? No. But instead, Sloane is just kind of there. Sometimes. And while there's some tense moments between the two, they ultimately just kind of get along. I really don't remember any true point of catharsis where they kind of reconciled their feelings towards each other. Vi and Sloane could have been a focal point of this story. But then like too many distractions come up and we lose focus of them two. Honestly, there are parts of the book where I entirely forgot that Sloane was a character here. So there is a big heaping, steamy pile of character development we could have gotten, but no, it just kind of fades in the background. Flushed away, instead of being dealt with, instead of being wrestled with, instead of being squeezed between the fingies. And then there's Catriona, a Griffin rider for the Resistance, whom we find out was actually engaged to Xaden at one point as like a political move amongst the rebels. But then they broke up. It's history. And on top of that, Cat has these like powers that inflame people's emotions. That's promising enough. Sounds to me like this character could be a good old Taco Bell hot sauce pack right in the top ramen. We first catch wind of her like 100 pages in when Xaden's cousin's like, oh, about Cat? And Violet's like, what the, who is this Cat you speak of? And then the first time we actually really see Cat is halfway through this 600 freaking page book. Why wasn't she here earlier? We could have easily seen Vi coming in contact with her any number of times that Vi is, visiting Xaden at the rebel camp. Vi notices her and starts to notice the sort of relationship that her and Xaden have. Violet would become super irrationally jealous and not sure why, only to go back home and keep this all inside because she can't tell her friends. That sounds pretty entertaining. It would make Vi trust Xaden even less than she does currently. This could have been a cool way for Vi and Xaden's relationship to be challenged. Nope. Cat comes into the picture in part 2 of the book. They have a moment where they duke it out, get into a cool fight, and then mostly just kind of gets tucked under the rug not long after that. They're just fine. They're cordial, Imagine if Vi and Cat had like back and forth altercations throughout the book. Every time she visits, Vi would have to learn to control and temper her emotions and still find some way to trust Xaden, even though she's, not quite sure about him. And then as she matures a little bit, maybe grows in strength, Vi and Cat beat the crap out of each other in this final battle. Would have been cool. What is so frustrating about the inclusion of both of these characters is that they had very clear spaces in which they could affect the story. They could develop Violet. They could add to this sequel, but in reality, they are just presented and not utilized to their full potential. They're just shown to us and then just like, they're both half-assed and therefore not whole-assed. I want some whole-ass kind of characters, man. And honestly, there could have been a moment where Vi had, some sort of form of catharsis with Sloane or something like that. I'm going to be real honest with you. I had a hard time not checking out while reading this book, so maybe it's there. There's a very real possibility that I missed it. But at the very least, I never even saw like clear signs leading up to that. If I did miss the one moment that these characters had something meaningful, it was just kind of like a bullet point and then left alone after that. I don't know why we spent so much time with Vi just sneaking around her friends and stuff when we could have been focusing in more on some of these cooler interactions with Sloane and with Cat. And these are two characters that are in different parts of the story, so she could have bounced between them. When she's at school, she's wrestling with her relationship with Sloane. When she goes to visit Xaden, then she's confronted with Cat. It could have been fun to read. Shoot, well, okay, if we're not getting interesting things from Sloane and Kat, then how do we raise the stakes in this book? How do we take things to the next level? What about bringing Jack Barlow back? What? Literally, why? What legitimate point on God's green flat earth was there to bring Jack Barlow back from the certain dead? He was the most bland and pointless protagonist who had no other memorable motivation for antagonizing Vi than, you're dead. Brother was a basic high school villain from like an 80s movie. And we're bringing that back? That's the only villain you could add in this? It made sense for him to get lightning blasted off a cliff or whatever the freak happened in Fourth Wing. He was a disposable character. He served his purpose. And now we're bringing him back to spice up the plot. What are we doing? That other guy, that general guy, I don't know. I don't even remember his name. Who keeps, really just like messing with Violet. I mean, he's all right. Like he was at least something new. Jack Barlow, really? We bring Jack Barlow back because a book without Jack Barlow is not a Pulitzer Prize kind of book. And that's what we're going for here. Oh, cool. Okay, so JB's back. What are we going to do with him? Is he going to be kind of like a cool or mysterious entity, moving around throughout the book? Yeah, not really. Vi falls off a dragon, lands on a roof, is starting to slide off of it, and then JB shows up and saves her? Oh, okay, sure. Kind of intriguing, I guess. Will we see more of that later? Nah. He actually shows up in the last few chapters of the book, kills his dragon, and it becomes a venom. Where in the HELL double hockey sticks did that come from? Listen, if you're gonna do something like this, connect the dots for us a little bit. We literally see him twice in the whole book, and one of those times was that plot twist villain moment. Excellent execution. Then there's the dragons, which is kind of what this whole book is about, but somehow it's not really about that. But Andarna has an interesting development in this book. Because she's an adolescent, she goes into hibernation. She's growing up into a preteen dragon. And the interesting piece here is that because Andarna spent so much of her power to protect Violet in the previous book, she now seems a bit stunted and is not able to hibernate in the normal way that dragons would typically. So Andarna's out of the picture for a good chunk of this book. Taryn is so hard and crusty. I thought this would be a good opportunity for Violet and Taryn to kind of connect more and maybe build more on their relationship. Learn some things about Taryn that we didn't really know before, and vice versa. But yeah, no. It's just kind of business as usual. Taryn is his old crusty self. That's really about it. But then we come back to Andarna. Andarna, hatches from her hibernation or whatever. Hatches is not the right word. And we find out that she's a lot more behind in the process of growth than we thought she might be. In fact, she might not be able to fly, especially with a human being on her. Okay, all right, now we're getting somewhere. This is interesting because, in a way, Andarna now has a sort of physical disability, right? And this could so clearly connect with Violet and her disability in the way that they're both challenged in being able to fight in the way that they're expected to come alongside these other soldiers in war. It would be the kind of interesting thing to explore if this book did not completely forget that Vi has EDS. I want to thank all of you in the comments of my Fourth Wing video who had EDS and were able to share some of your experiences. It was really helpful and definitely gave me more insight on this condition. It was really cool to hear your perspective of if you actually connected with this character who had EDS or not, and the ways in which that worked for you or didn't. So again, as I speak on this, please just let me know. I would love to hear from those who do have EDS to comment on what their thoughts were about this book. From what I've learned, it sounds like EDS can affect your skin, but it also is a lot of your joints and ligaments. Because this is a condition that affects connective tissues, it seems like it's really responsible for a lot of pain in everyday movement. And so for a character like Violet to have something like this would be a real challenge when she's expected to move fast, move quickly, and also take a beating too. I think from some of what y'all have said, Fourth Wing seems to kind of pick and choose when, this disability is more front-facing. But nevertheless, without clearly saying it, it seems like the context clues suggest that she has it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think this book even once mentions this physical challenge that she had from Fourth Wing at all. Again, it is possible that I checked out harder than the only copy of The Dark Knight at Blockbuster, but I'm pretty sure that Violet has no mention of this physical struggle at all in this book. Even if it was mentioned like once or twice, and I just missed it, it certainly does not seem like it is a part of her character anymore that is worth being portrayed to us in a meaningful way. So then we come back to Andarna. Why create a character that could so easily connect with Violet in this way, only to forget that Violet had EDS? It's like you got a square hole, and then this book is coming in with the square peg, but then the square hole just kind of gone now. So you're left with like a square peg in your hand. Doesn't really mean much on its own, does it? The thing is, to me, this does not read as a missed opportunity, but rather an example of just poor writing. Yarros didn't even have to involve this part in Andarna. Honestly, if you took this character development from Andarna away, I would probably have less of a problem because it wasn't there to begin with. It wouldn't have been an issue. And yeah, sure, maybe it could be, you know, something that comes up in the next book, but why not build on it now? Like, if you're giving it to us, why not do something with it? Why? All right, now let's talk about Violet and Xaden. Just talk to each other. Just sit down and have a conversation. Why y'all acting so goofy when you can just talk to each other? Try it once. Keep your nasty selves in your pants and talk to each other. Violet and Xaden are locked in the stalemate of not talking to each other because Violet wants to trust Xaden, but Xaden isn't able to be completely transparent with her because he's a freaking general of an uprising. Xaden can't tell her much because he is an integral part of this resistance. But Vi demands that he is completely transparent with her. And since he can't do that, they're locked in a stalemate. But because they're so horny, they can't even have consistent boundaries between each other. Vi, why do you need to know everything about Xaden? I know you love him and therefore want him to be transparent with you, but he knows highly sensitive information about a secret uprising. And you, when you're at school, have a former best friend under leadership of the kingdom that you're uprising against, and he's got the power to read minds. Violet, do you want to be a liability? Like, why are you not able to recognize that you can compromise the whole freaking mission because you know information? You've literally had like 2 or 3 instances where the higher-ups at Basgiath are trying to torture the information out of you. And yet you're still pissed that Xaden won't share it. If I was dating Xaden, I would be fine with not knowing, because I know he would put me in a really bad spot. Just a preference thing. If I was dating Xaden, that's what I would do. Because then you two just have the same argument 5 times in a row and don't get anywhere. Let me put it this way. Was Violet and Xaden's relationship challenged in a meaningful way that not only helped them like grow, but mature together and gave them even more security in relationship, even just a little bit than before? No. Now, to move on to the second overarching problem I had with this book, if we step back and look at this book as a whole, I don't think this book actually expands or explores any of the elements from Fourth Wing in a meaningful way, in a way that actually warrants a sequel. We got Sloane and Kat, but they don't really add that much. We get to see Griffin's more. Pretty cool. Surprisingly, we get an in-depth explanation about how runes work. Yarros, you've been so nondescript about so many things. Why did you go so hard into the science of runes? I definitely got a little jump scare from that lore expansion there. I already forgot how it works. Andarna goes through a pretty significant change. Doesn't really mean much at the end of the day. We learn that there are rare cases that you could have 2 powers at once. Pretty cool. Xaden apparently has the ability to read people's intentions, which is equal parts confusing and intriguing. Sows some more skepticism into Vi. Okay, sure. Now that Vi and Xaden are on solid ground in their relationship, it could challenge them in a future book, but I'm not holding my breath. All right, well, what about the antagonists, the Wyvern and the Venin? What do we learn about the Wyvern and the Venin from this book? Not much. And honestly, I think they were very ineffective villains. The huge draw for them in Fourth Wing is that they are these fabled evil beings that are operating in the background and swept under the rug by the kingdom. But in the end, we find out that they're actually real and terrible. In Iron Flame, yeah, we don't learn anything about them. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know what they're doing. We don't even know what they're eating on a regular basis to make sure that they're maintaining a good gut biome. I don't think we learn anything about them. Please, correct me if I'm wrong. I had a strong case of chloroforminitis while reading this book. It's entirely possible that I could have missed the one detail that we learn about them, but I don't think we get anything about this story's major antagonists. And I just have to ask, Why not? I swear the only role they play in this book is, ooh, they're out there. Oh, now they're over there. Oh, now they're in here. Oh my gosh. They're just an arbitrary threat that just pops out whenever it's the most convenient for the plot, or inconvenient for the plot, whatever works. It's okay that we don't know much about them in the first book, but in this one, because we don't learn anything about them in this book, they just become these arbitrary things. You could just swap out the Wyvern and Venom for just some other antagonistic group, and it really wouldn't change much. Vi is still gonna be trying to, rebuild the ward to protect from invaders. It's the same thing. What we needed from this book is to either, one, like, let us more in on their motivation or like their plan, their global vision, or introduce us to a Venom that we like get to know personally a little bit more, like a General Venom, like a Captain Venom or something like that. Or maybe like somebody that they capture and they interrogate and like start to see how they think and how they operate, to give us more of a face to the boogeyman. Fourth Wing told us that Venom exists, and Iron Flame tells us that they still exist. Stakes for the revolution aren't fleshed out because the antagonists aren't fleshed out. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm wrong. We do get a major Venom upgrade in this book. I totally spaced. I'm so sorry. Because they got Jack Barlow, baby! Remember how I mentioned earlier that good old Jay Bisler was resurrected? No. Remember that guy that we saw maybe a total of 2 times in this entire 600-page book? No? Well, okay, let me do you one better. He's actually the plot twist villain now, huh? Pretty sick, right? I think I'm wrong. I'm so sorry. That is the kind of plot twist that just elevated this book in a way that my snail brain couldn't really catch up to yet. I haven't really put it together till now. I really had to meditate on that one, actually. I'm so sorry, everyone. I might just scrap all that I had just previously said about all this. I know I have gone on for a while about things that I have not really liked about this book that much. And I just want to emphasize, if this wasn't clear already, this is just my opinion. I've seen people who really liked Fourth Wing and also really like this book. And that's absolutely valid. I am not claiming that you have bad taste or anything. I don't want to yuck your yum, man. I'm just sharing with you my personal criteria for a book like this and why I don't really think it hit the mark. If you already really enjoyed where Fourth Wing took you, I think you might feel the same way about this book too. I just know for me, since I was already pretty mixed about Fourth Wing, it was definitely a little bit more of an uphill battle to enjoy this one. And to me, I just don't think it had enough of those elements that really either expanded enough or were just fun enough to carry me through it in a way that I enjoyed it at all. It just felt like for every character or plot moment where Yarros took a step forward, there were like 1 or 2 steps back. Follow me for a sec. It's as if she's making an ice cream cone, right? And then she's introducing some peanuts on it. Peanuts on ice cream, that sounds pretty good. But then she takes away the ice cream. So you're just left with a handful of peanuts. If you're gonna give us a 600-page sequel, there better be some development to justify some peanuts in your hand. It's funny because this book challenged me in a pretty unique way. Not the characters, just me. Because there were so many things I wanted to see developed, but didn't, it really made me take a moment and consider for myself the criteria of what makes a good sequel, the kind of things that you should and shouldn't do. And I think this was a good example of what you shouldn't do. Last year, I read A Court of Mist and Fury, and that is a really fun sequel. To me, that's a great example of a sequel that just takes things to the next level and expands on previous elements. So it was really interesting to think about that book in contrast to this one, and now clearly seeing the sort of things that I think makes for a good sequel. That's all I'm trying to say. And I know that without a doubt, probably before I even finished Iron Flame, the next book, I think is called Onyx Storm, is already announced for next year, early next year. And I'm probably not gonna read it. There's a part of me that could see myself enjoying hate reading it, but with a book as long as these books are, I just value my time a little bit more. I don't have the time to read a book that I know I'm probably gonna not like. Probably. I'm just gonna leave that one on the shelf, but no, come on, no, not again. Well, thank you so much for watching and for sending me on a one-way trip to the Shadow Realm. I hear it is beautiful this time of year. If you stuck around this long, I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek. The next video I'm making is about skateboarding. So if that all sounds interesting, consider subscribing. And if you want to support the channel, get some bonus content and even some updates on what I'm reading, what I'm watching, consider joining and becoming a member. Good night from the Shadow Realm, everybody. Love y'all. See you in next video from the Shadow Realm.